Welcome into the A-List podcast. I'm Kwani A. Lunis, joined by A. Sherrod Blakely. And I have he's frozen. I did all that for no reason. Oh, he's here. I couldn't tell.
I wasn't frozen. I was.
Well,
I
you
was
just stood there staring
I
at
was
me.
locked. I was locked in, Kwani, being completely focused and locked into what you were saying. It's
anyway.
Like that. It's AG.
Yes, I have a package that just arrived at my door today, and it relates to our podcast. I opened it so you don't have to wait for me to unbox it. But Miran's book just showed up on my front step. Well, not really, in my mailroom. So if you haven't gotten it yet, make sure you check it out. I'm excited to read this and get into the mind and story of Giannis.
I got the hardback copy at my home. I've got the Kindle version on my phone.
All right. Always have to one-up me. Goodness gracious.
Yes.
It's okay. I forgive you.
It's all good. It's okay.
How you been? What you think about these Celtics and the moves that they've been making?
You know what? They've been pretty good. I mean, I they're definitely making moves that are going to make them better. Brad Stevens is showing us something that, side of I didn't think he had in him. I just might bring Brad to the barbecue with some of the moves he's made. I kind of like what I see. I like this Brad. I like Brad the GM. I really do. There are things about Brad the GM that you could come and hang with me. I like this. I think they're starting to get players that will just fit in better with the vision I think Ime Udoka has for this team. Brad has shown the ability to do. I have respect for Brad because he is about doing what he feels is the best thing to do, even if it might conflict with how he feels towards someone personal level. Much respect. And that is something that a lot of coaches, when they make that transition from being a head coach to being in the front office, they struggle with that because when you're with these guys as a coach, day in, day out, you're going to practice, you're eating together, you're doing who knows what together. And then you switch to being kind of their, not just their coach, but their boss, the person who literally controls whether you stay on a team or you out in Siberia, a.k.a. Sacramento. That changes things. And Brad has shown a very seamless transition to his new role, which I think is, again, it's a great thing to see.
We'll get more into that with our guest that's coming up, but you are in Vegas. My flight is still on its way there. You've talked to a few people close to the organization. What have those conversations been like? And who did you talk to?
Well, I had a chance to – me and Danny Ainge actually had a good conversation shortly after he arrived here. And the one thing that I found really interesting was that he made it clear that all the decisions that we're seeing being made now are Brad Stevens and his staff's decisions. But Danny has made himself available as a sounding board, and they're taking advantage of that. Him and Brad have had lots of communication this summer. And the thing that Danny said, the coolest part about what he does now is they can ask me, I could tell them, or I could not tell them. I don't have to have input into whatever they're doing. It's my choice if I want to. And he would, at this point, he just wants to give them someone who they can bounce things off of, and he can just give them some advice that he learned along the way. And then ultimately they have to decide whether to use what he's giving them advice about or just discard it. And I think the way Brad Stevens has kind of done things so far, clearly he's listened to Danny, but I don't think he's done everything the way Danny would have done it, which to me, I think there's a lot you have to respect that Brad is not trying to appease his old boss. He's trying to get the damn job done right now, which is why Brad come to the barbecue, because it's about getting the damn job done.
There we go. Have you talked to anyone else?
I had a chance to talk with our good friend Grant Williams, aka El Vice Presidente.
Yeah,
he recently elected to the NBA Players Association Executive Board, a board that consists of 9 members. Him and Jalen are the only 2 teammates that are on the board, so says a lot about their leadership. But the big thing that I wanted to find out about Grant, and I think it's the biggest question that Celtics fans were curious about, is why the hell aren't you playing on this damn Summer League team? What's the deal? And he explained to me that basically his exit meeting with Brad Stevens, he was given a choice. And Brad's basically, the way Grant explained it to me was there wasn't this pressing need for him to play because in his time in the Celtics, he's already played 123 games. So it wasn't as if he was hurt. And he said if he hadn't been hurt or he hadn't played as many games, then he probably would have been on the team and he probably would have wanted to play. But I played 123 games. I am not hurt. So there's not a whole lot for him to have gotten out of Summer League other than to make folks like me and Celtics fans appease that he is playing more games because we want to see him get better. I thought he had a very up and down season. Him and I, we talked about just his season in general and some of the things that he's looking to do and to become a more reliable scorer. And I think for him, that's a natural progression that he should want because when you have a Jason Tatum, you have a Jaylen Brown, you've got all these really dynamic offensive-minded players, teams are going to adjust their defense to try to limit them. That means guys like you, Grant, are going to be wide open or lightly guarded. So knocking down open shots, I think, is a big priority for him this offseason. Only time will tell if he can actually do that with the kind of consistency that I think he needs to, and the Celtics certainly need him to.
There we go. You heard it straight from Grant via Sherrod. Why he's not playing Summer League.
There you go. And that's what he told me. So
up next, we have a special guest who writes for basketballnews.com. We'll bring him in now.
He's got a fancy title now and everything.
I heard. I got to ask him about that.
He used to be one of my grinders, but now he's kind of like, how you doing up there, fella? Okay.
We welcome in now our guest, Alex Kennedy of basketballnews.com. And like Sherrod gets excited about his title. Alex, what's your title at basketballnews.com?
It is Chief Content Officer. And before Sherrod jumps in here, I did not make it up myself. I did not give it to myself. But yes, that is my title.
When I saw that title, I thought, wow, Alex was one of the people. Look at him now. He's a Chief Content Officer. I felt so bad for about 90 seconds, and then I realized someone probably gave him that title.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Sherrod's known me since I was literally like 16 years old. So we go way back here. So I can imagine why that sounds so strange to you. But it did seem weird when I first heard it too. I was in the past, I've been like senior writer, senior editor, managing editor. But to go to that sounds, way more important than I actually am. But yeah.
What a level
yes,
up. Love it.
He's still one of my guys. I love Alex. And hopefully the Celtics fans will love one of their new guys, a guy by the name of Dennis Schröder. The German Rondo, as I recall him being referenced to many years ago.
I could get behind that.
So I've got my own feelings about it, but I'm just curious, Alex. I mean, you've been around the league for a really long time. You've seen Dennis play plenty of times. You've talked to people who know him. Why should Celtics fans feel good about this?
I think for the Celtics, this is such a cheap deal, a bargain deal. If this deal had happened on the first day of free agency, if they had signed into a 1-year, $5.9 million deal, imagine the reaction that, people would have had around the league. Fans have been freaking out, praising Brad Stevens, saying this is an insane deal. His stock has been hurt because people, teams passed on him in free agency, and we saw him have to wait longer than pretty much all the notable guys, to sign a deal. So that's kind of why his stock's been hit a little bit. Everyone's making fun of him on Twitter, talking about him passing up all that money, $84 million. But that kind of, we're forgetting this is a guy that was offered $84 million several months ago. So to get him at $5.9 million, for 1 year is pretty remarkable. So I think, for Schröder, I get it. He gets to sign a prove-it deal above the minimum on a playoff team, that where he should get a lot of attention. There's significant playing time there, so he's going to be able to go in, kind of show what he can do, and then he can try to hit free agency again next offseason and, sign a bigger deal. I think for the Celtics, it's really a low-risk, high-reward move. Even if he's horrible and this doesn't work out, at that contract and what he's shown over the last 2 years with the Lakers and Thunder, they could even just move him. So there's really no downside if you're the Celtics. I think if they had signed him to that second year with a player option, like had been rumored that he apparently wanted, you could start getting to, okay, well, they'd be hard capped. And now all of a sudden, he can come back for a second year and limit your flexibility a little bit. On a 1-year deal, I don't think there's really any downside for the Celtics. I think if he's able to contribute like he did in OKC as a sixth man and score a ton when he averaged, 19 points, or if he starts and, is more of a facilitator and like he did last year with the Lakers when he averaged 15, 6, and 3, I think that, that's huge for this team that, obviously was looking for some point guard help after moving on from Kemba Walker. So I think it makes a ton of sense for the Celtics. There's a ton of teams out there that would have loved to have him at this price, I think. Obviously, he didn't get the big bucks that he wanted, but to get him on such a bargain deal, I think it's a huge win for Brad Stevens and the Celtics.
When rumors began to surface that this was something that the Celtics were interested in doing, my first thought was, come on, stop, people. There's no way that they can get this guy who clearly is in that high teens, low 20s, maybe even mid 20s as far as millions per year range. They don't have the money. It's like going to the dealership and saying, I want a Maybach, and you don't have enough money for a Mazda. It's not gonna get done. And yet, lo and behold, to me, this was very Danny Ainge-like as far as holding out. Just the market is gonna just calibrate in such a way that I can get the guy that I want for the price that I want. Because the other thing too, Alex, and you know this, they could have given him a larger mid-level. Yeah, we're going to give you the smaller one. And it makes me think about like when you go to the grocery store and you see that bag of Twizzlers and it's $1.59, but your shopping cart says you can get it for 99 cents. Are you really going to pay more when you don't have to? Of course not. This, to me, I'm not sure which was the bigger bang for your buck deal, this one or Oladipo going back to Miami, because it's pretty close between the two.
I would say it's this one because Oladipo, there were concerns about, if he would even sign this offseason until he could prove that he was healthy. So with Schroeder, there's none of those question marks surrounding him with the health and everything like that. And we've seen Schroeder play at a higher level more recently. Yeah, Oladipo has had the higher, point in his career a few years ago with Indiana when he was all NBA, but he's really had a pretty big fall since then. So I think Schroeder is the better deal and probably the safer deal, to be honest. It's a minimum deal for Oladipo, but there's a possibility that we don't see Oladipo play very many games this year because of the injury stuff. He's going to miss a big chunk of the season with that the injury. So yeah, I think this is a better deal. But yeah, I love it. I think it makes a whole lot of sense. And I think you're right. They really were there. There was no other teams that could offer what the Celtics could offer in terms of like the significant playing time on a playoff team. So there were teams out there that could have either given him more money, but maybe he wouldn't have been able to go, have a lot of exposure or go to the playoffs. Maybe, there were teams out there that maybe were better teams or were offering, the same amount of money, but they didn't have the same kind of playing time to offer. So I think the Celtics recognized, hey, we have the best situation for him. So we don't need to give him that second year and a player option. We don't need to give him the full mid-level and hard cap ourselves. We get to keep our cap flexibility. I think that's a big thing we've seen, Brad Stevens in this front office, they really value that flexibility going forward. So we've seen a lot of shorter deals and things there. So I think it makes a ton of sense. And I think for Schroeder too, this is a good opportunity for him because he will get that significant playing time. And we've seen he's a guy that is not a great shooter. He's a 33% three-point shooter throughout his career. So the fact that he's surrounded by so many good shooters, I think will really help him too. That's going to benefit him a lot. So I just get why he chose Boston and why Boston was happy to sign him at that price. It seems like it could be a win-win for both sides.
Yeah.
Another person who just got a title change is Brad Stevens. He's now the GM, as you mentioned. What has been your impression on the moves that he's made so far for Boston?
I think he's done a really solid job. We saw that the Kemba Walker trade happened very quickly, right after he took over the job. I know some people were critical of that, but I think it makes sense to bring in someone like Al Horford who you're familiar with and can have a big impact on and off the court, especially in the locker room with his leadership and mentoring some other guys and things there. I think he's done a solid job. I think, Boston has a number of young guys that they can develop. We're seeing some of them here in Las Vegas in Summer League that, could step up and take on a bigger role. I think the Schroeder deal, again, like we just talked about, I think it's one of the best moves of this offseason. So he deserves credit for that. And again, like I said before, if this had happened on the first day of free agency, imagine the praise we'd be hearing for Brad Stevens. But because it's happening now, whenever everyone just wants to make jokes about Schroeder and troll him on Twitter, you're not really hearing a whole lot about it. It's just all about, the negative stuff. So I think he's done a great job. It's very hard to make that transition when you've never really had experience in a front office and you've just been a head coach. It's a whole different set of responsibilities. So the fact that he's already doing a great job is pretty impressive, and he's only going to get better, the more experience he has. So I think it's a great start for him.
Yeah, the big thing about Brad is and it's really it's the same way when you're a player. I mean, just figuring out your tempo, your pace, the rhythm that you have to play with in order to be effective. And I thought, he kind of threw us threw us off guard when within it seemed like, damn, seconds after getting the job, Kemba Walker was gone. It was like, damn, you used to like talk just glowingly, effusively about your love.
How you really feel, Brad?
And you just like, okay, Kemba, hey, bye-bye. Well, wait, what? And I'm thinking, Brad really that cutthroat? And then you look at the Schröder deal, and you're thinking, there's no way in hell that Brad has any shot of making this happen. But it's okay, because it felt very much like so many other players where they've got their top 3 or 4 lists, and the Celtics on their top 3 or 4 lists. But we know damn well that the Celtics are going to always be second runner-up, third runner-up, or they're just not going to cut it. And yet, lo and behold, team after team fell off. Brad was in position to make something happen, and he pulled the trigger right time. And to me, that has been, I think, the most impressive thing about Brad so far is the moves are pretty good, but the timing of the moves is impressive. Like, if he would have really went in hard on Schröder earlier, it got done, because Schröder would have been like, look, I made $20 million. I'm the freaking German Rondo, and I'm 28 years old. You can't be coming out with me, please. I'm so much better. Later, wait, how much I offered again? Where the pin at? Where do I sign?
Yeah.
That, and to me, that's just, as much as and easy as it is to troll, Schröder for basically pissing away $78 million, I would much rather talk about how Brad Stevens low-key just kind of trolled him as his people were putting out how, he should get more, and Brad's just like, we'll be right here when you're ready. Just say the word.
Yeah.
We'll be right here. And they got their.
I'm glad you mentioned how cutthroat Brad is too, because I think that's that's something you have to be when you're in that role. And I think that's why we've seen a lot of other head coaches that have taken on like both titles at the same time have really struggled. There's executives around the league that I've talked to that have said that they don't want to get close to their players because they know they're going to have to turn around and trade them, and they have to make those hard business decisions. So if you're super close to your players and you have those strong relationships, sometimes that can kind of cloud your judgment with things. So I think the fact that we've seen, even though he did say, plenty of positive things about Kemba Walker, and I'm sure they had a good relationship, the fact that it didn't really stop him from making that move, and he was pretty cutthroat, I think that shows that, he can make the important decisions and can really thrive in that role. So I think that's impressive. And I think one thing that's good too is I'm glad Boston didn't try to give him both titles. We've seen that really hasn't worked, around the NBA. Because then it's so conflicting. I think when you're, running a front office, you need to have a long-term view of the organization. Whereas when you're a head coach, you're looking at how you win the next game and focus on every game, and you're willing to sacrifice the future to make sure you can win right now. So I think it allows Brad to kind of have that long-term view of things. I think he's also done an incredible job, with the coaching search. I think that is something that he deserves credit for. I was very curious too to see how someone as respected as Brad as a coach now runs a coaching search. We don't really get to see that very often, where a guy who basically, that this kind of thing doesn't happen, where a guy's picking his replacement as a head coach, weeks after the season ended, and he's now in the position where he's hiring the guy. It's so strange. But I think Ime Udoka, he's someone that's so respected, and I think that was just an incredible hire too. So I'm a big fan of what Brad has done so far. I'm curious for you guys, what's the perception around Celtics fans of how Brad's doing and what this front office has done this offseason?
Well, to me, it's a typical Celtics roller coaster ride. When Brad first got the job, it was like, oh, okay, this is okay. But damn it, Danny left him nothing to work with. Danny. And Brad's like, okay. And so then he trades Kemba Walker, gets Al Horford. And I thought it was kind of mixed. I thought it was pretty even. And then free agency starts, then the draft comes around, and they draft an 18-year-old kid from France. And people are like, it's 45th pick, no big deal. And then free agency starts, and everyone is making moves, and the Celtics aren't. It's like, damn it, Brad, how can you da-da-da-da-da-da? So then they hated him. And then he pulls this little rabbit out and gets, the German for 5.9 pennies on the dollar. And now all of a sudden, we're ready to put a bust up in front of the TD Garden of Brad Stevens because he's just amazingly awesome now. So that's Celtics fandom in a nutshell right there. Here's the thing I will say about Brad, and we can move on from here, but I love the fact that Brad as a head coach never seemed to be flustered or frustrated or moving too slow. Brad as a GM is the same way. He's consistent, and to your point, Alex, his ability to separate the personal connections and feelings that he has for players from I got to get this done is impressive. Because I know of some coaches who were able to have enough success where they were then given the power to be the coach and GM. They struggled with that. They struggled with that to the point where they left the franchises eventually in kind of a pretty crappy place. And Brad, however long he stays in this position, because again, I don't believe that Brad will be here significantly long. I think he's a stopgap measure till they transition into a different era. But he's in good shape. And I think the way that he's going about doing it is the way that you should do it. Hire a smart coach who has a gritty, grimy work ethic, strong work ethic, who has been around the league long enough.
I'll add that I definitely never thought I'd hear Brad Stevens and Cutthroat in the same sentence. But to Sherrod's point, the fact that he has been able to step into really that bad boy role, because when you look at the franchise, Danny has always been that bad guy, trader Danny. Everyone looked at him as the enemy. But Brad being so beloved by fans and now stepping into that role in a way which still doesn't really seem abrasive, considering that he is making these cutthroat moves. I think Celtics fans, from what I gather, are impressed with what he's done so far. So I am curious to see how long he can stay in their good graces until he makes a move that maybe they wouldn't necessarily like.
No, I was just agreeing with you guys. I think it makes sense. He's someone I trust his his talent evaluation. I think he's someone that I think does a good job of merging analytics and eye test and things like that. So yeah, I think he's going to do a great job. And he's still so young too. He's someone that I think he's succeeded pretty much everywhere he's been when he kind of puts his mind to something and works on it. So yeah, I think his future is bright in this position.
Absolutely. And speaking of bright futures, that's why we're here in Vegas, to see some of these young stars of the future. You can't have this conversation without starting with the number one pick, Cade Cunningham. Have you had a chance to see Cade play much, Alex?
Yeah, so I've watched some of Cade. I'll be honest, we're running around doing so many interviews here. We're always, backstage post game. That's where you and I have been seeing each other a lot. So I've seen a little bit. I think, to be honest with you, I've been more impressed with Jalen Green than Cade Cunningham so far. I think, Cade, here's the way I always describe his game. I think he was a very safe pick for Detroit. I think he's going to have a long career, 15 years, and he does have a lot of upside. But his floor is just so high. I think there's no question he's going to be a really significant contributor on a team for a long time. But when you just watch Jalen Green, you're thinking, oh man, this guy could be an absolute superstar, one of the best players in the NBA if he maximizes his full potential. So I've been really blown away by Jalen Green. And I think he does have an advantage in this environment because it's so similar to what he did last year in the G League. And he's talked about that after games. He said this feels like a G League game, whereas other guys are adjusting to playing against older guys and the speed of the NBA game and things like that. So I do think that with Cade, I've been very impressed, talking with him, just his maturity. Our Spencer Davies actually yesterday asked him a great question about, how do you try to, basically develop long-term while still and try to get to where you want to go eventually as a player while still, making the most of this rookie season, essentially, and adjust to the NBA, where you're a guy that he's used to winning at every level throughout his entire life, and now you go to a team that's likely going to lose a lot of games. Like, how do you adjust there? And he had a great answer about how you can't rush things. There's, basically he needs to take it game by game, and you can't you can't fast forward to year 3. So he needs to make the most of every opportunity. And he even said, I know that this is just summer league, but you can take a ton of lessons from summer league and learn a ton of things. So I don't know. I think he does have a really good head on his shoulders, and he seems very mature. He has a very high basketball IQ as well. So I've been impressed with Cade, but if I had to say so far who's blown me away the most, I would say it's Jalen Green. I don't remember a rookie that's come out and had this great of a performance, through the first few games of Summer League. Maybe like a Damian Lillard came out and just blew everyone away, and, when he came through Vegas. But, I mean, he's just dominating out there, and it's been really fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what's going to happen when he starts playing the Kyrie Irving, the James Harden, the guys who can absolutely crush your soul if you ain't ready for that. Because when they'll see the comments where he says, this is just kind of like G League game, and they're thinking like, yeah, we got something for you, young fella. We got your G League over here. But you're right, though. I mean, he's been really good. I mean, there's no question about it. And there's going to obviously be debate between whether he should have been the next pick or should it have been our guy Mobley with Cleveland. I think is really, really good. It's a good conversation to have. It's a really good one to have.
Yeah, now, I'm going to say something. It's kind of a hot take here. And I haven't said this because I don't want to get a lot of backlash, but I think it's very possible, like 10 years from now, we're looking back at this draft and wondering why Cade Cunningham went before Jalen Green and Evan Mobley. That's very possible. And again, I think
you do.
I think Cunningham is very safe. So I understand why you maybe be drawn to that. But as far as the upside and the ceiling, those two guys, Jalen Green and Evan Mobley, I mean, their upside is just insane. So, yeah, I mean, it's possible. I hope that's not the case because, I hope Cade Cunningham has a great career. He seems like a great kid and has a very high basketball IQ, again, things like that, seems mature. But I'm just – when I hear, like, people say generational talent and stuff attached to him, that's very strong. That's very strong words. So, I don't know. I feel like, he's played well at every level that, he's been at, and he's – shined. But when you hear things like, oh, he's not that explosive, he's not the most athletic guy, he's not the best shooter. I don't know. There's some questions about him. So maybe he can be that, Luka, Paul Pierce type. I know people compare him to those kind of players. And if that happens, great. But I don't know. I think he has a high floor, but I don't know if his ceiling is as high as those other two.
That's fair. That's fair. Closer to Celticsville, you have a guy like Yam Madar, really skilled player. Had a great first game for the Celtics. Second game, not so much. What are some of your early impressions of Yam?
Yeah, so we do a thing every day at basketballnews.com, 5 studs and duds, where we kind of break down, who's playing really well in Vegas and who's struggling. I know yesterday he was one of our duds, 0 points, 0-3 from the field. Didn't really play that great. But I think, you just see that he's 20 years old. He has a ways to go with his development. I think they're trying to play him off the ball. And I don't know. I think he still has a ways to go. I do think that he has a bright NBA future and he can keep developing and could eventually, be effective. But I think he has to know how to incorporate other moves than just his fadeaway in the mid-range. And I think he needs to be a smarter passer. We've seen some of the decisions that he's made haven't been great. Like there's one point where he's making, taking like a 12-foot floater and it's pretty effective. It's smart. But then the next play, he's, pulling up for a jumper and getting blocked from behind. So I do think that, the potential is there, but there's no question he needs time to develop. But I mean, I do think Boston can do a great job with that. They do a good job of working with these young guys and giving them a customized development plan and helping these guys reach their full potential. So there's really no rush for him either to step into a role right away. So I think eventually, they can work with him and help him reach his potential, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the physical dynamic. He just needs to get bigger and stronger, literally fit bigger and stronger. The other thing, too, though, that I love is that he just has a really good feel for the game. There are little things that he does that are clear basketball IQ decisions. In that first game, there was a point where there was an inbound pass, and he made this motion as if he was trying to set a back screen. And at the last minute, he just popped back out and was just wide open and drained a baseline jumper. And I'm thinking, that is not something that was drawn up. That was him recognizing a situation, how to get himself free and making the most of it. And there's little things I know the Celtics are excited about, but there are bigger things that they're not excited about, like the fact that he's probably a $130, $140, maybe. He's a really thin dude. And again, I'm potentially bully ball him, and that should never happen. That should never happen. But it is a very real possibility if he were in the NBA right now. I would love to see him back overseas one more year.
Yeah, I think it's so hard that age though to like put weight on sometimes. Like yesterday, I think I told you, Sherrod, we were at a gym here in Vegas, watching the Charlotte Hornets practice yesterday, and LaMelo Ball was practicing with him, and that guy is just so skinny. He's probably 180 pounds. Like they were doing some drills. He was just getting dominated in the post, like over and over again by all of his teammates. And he's been super effective still. Obviously, we know what LaMelo can do as a player. But I was thinking about it. I'm like, he is 19 years old, and it's very tough at that age to put weight on, especially when you're practicing every day and playing 82 games, or last year fewer games, but playing an NBA schedule, it's very difficult. So I agree with you. He needs to put on weight, and that's going to be huge for his development. But we've seen so many guys, once they enter the NBA and they can work with nutritionists and are part of that organization, and they can kind of make that transformation. So I get why they drafted him and, what they see in him, because, we could be talking about him bulking up and kind of figuring some of those things out. And, 3-4 years from now, he looks like a different player. So, yeah, I get it. I think also they're Peyton Pritchard's running the offense, so they're asking him to play off the ball. I'm not sure if he's used to doing that. He might be used to having the ball in his hands. So we've seen with some of these guys in Summer League, they've talked about that being a big adjustment for them, having to kind of learn to play off ball and haven't had a lot of experience with that. So, yeah, I mean, I think he has potential, but they definitely do have to bulk him up. He is very tiny. You're right.
Aaron Nesmith for the Celtics is another youngin, but this is his first Summer League. The fact that he gets to sort of develop his game during this offseason. What have you seen from him?
Yeah, he played amazing yesterday. Actually, I would recommend everyone read this article that we did recently. Our Spencer Davies interviewed Aaron, and I was blown away by just it seems like he just loves the game. He was super excited about being able to be out in Vegas and get this opportunity to play. He didn't have it last year. So, he just was very excited and basically said he wasn't taking any time off and just wanted to keep working because, he's excited. And he kept talking about how, he wants to take on a bigger role next year and, be ready for those bigger minutes and bigger responsibilities. So I was impressed with the interview. I think, he seems like a nice young kid, and I think he could be someone that, steps into a bigger role. And then, yesterday, 33 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists. It was a very efficient game too, 13 of 18 from the field, and then to go 7 of 9 from 3. That was the kind of performance where you're starting to say, okay, maybe this kid doesn't need to play in Summer League. That's the kind of performance.
Off the way he did, to be honest.
Exactly. Yeah. We've seen those kind of performances in the past where you deliver something like that, and then after the third or fourth game, you're on the sideline, sitting courtside with your vet teammates watching the young guys play. So yeah, that was impressive. I think he hadn't played as well in the first game, so it was really good to see that. He was playing really well, shooting the ball well off screens, maintaining his balance, showing him great consistency. We also saw him kind of attacking off the dribble, which I think was good. He was driving a lot, pulling up from mid-range. So yeah, I think that's what you want to see if you're Boston. If you're a second-year guy, even though they didn't have Summer League last year, any of these guys that have NBA experience, they should be dominating in this environment. Some of the guys that have been really struggling in this environment as a second-year guy, that's always concerning if you're a team. But Summer League for these guys, it's a chance for them to up their confidence, take on different responsibilities, try new things that they've been working on, and just show their team what they're capable of doing. So I think it's great to see him, playing that well. It was really kind of a struggle for him on Sunday, so I'm sure Boston was somewhat concerned. So to be able to step up and have that huge game, yesterday was probably, very relieving for Boston, and he looked great.
Yeah, he looked great, and our good friend Romeo Langford did not look great. Had the great dunk, but this is an All-Star weekend. This is
exactly.
So that dunk really doesn't have the same kind of impact.
Right.
How concerning do you think the Celtics are with Romeo, who doesn't look any worse, but doesn't exactly look that much better, even though now he's healthy?
Yeah, that's been the thing. He's dealt with injuries, and again, for someone at his age, you want to see him, be very effective. And even if you're not dominating in this environment, you want to see, you want to be one of the better players on the floor. It just seemed like he wasn't very aggressive either. 2 of 4 from the field. I don't know. It wasn't a very impressive performance. So I'm sure it's tough in this environment too. I will say, because so many of these guys haven't played together. You have a lot of new faces. Like I'm doing an article right now about the Denver Nuggets summer league team where they were missing some guys because of COVID. They had 8 players that came and played. I know Bones Highland, their rookie, he flew in and he got to Vegas 2 hours before the game started. So it is always kind of crazy. You've had like a week of practice time with these guys. There's no chemistry. There's like 6 plays, and then you're told to go out there and just play well. But again, you would think that guys like Romeo Langford and some of these older players, Orlando is seeing it right now with someone like Cole Anthony. He's someone that has kind of struggled and should be dominating. So I think that's where it is somewhat frustrating, I'm sure, for Boston. But I don't know. He is still very young. He still has upside. And look, maybe, he finishes Summer League strong. I don't want to overreact. It is a very small sample size in Summer League. So hopefully he can turn things around. But yeah, it wasn't a great performance. And I'm sure they're going to tell him to be more aggressive. That's the first thing. You can't take that few shots in Summer League when you're one of the best players on the floor for your team.
Kwani,
it's game time.
Game time.
Did I tell you that there were games on this show?
Yes, he did. I'm excited. I love it.
He warned you. Good. So our first game is called Fill in the Lane. I'm going to give you a prompt and you fill in the blank for it.
Okay.
So here's your first prompt. Blank will be so much better in their second year in the NBA.
Oh, man. I'm going to say RJ Hampton. I think he's someone that didn't get to play a whole lot in Denver last year, got traded to Orlando. I did an interview with him toward the end of the season once he was with the Magic, and I was very impressed with his maturity, and it's crazy. He said he was happy for Denver that they got someone like Aaron Gordon who could help them right away. And he was like praising Gordon's fit on the Nuggets. And, just to hear a kid that age, basically say how happy he was for the team that traded him. I thought that was really cool, first of all. But then it was a win-win trade. He basically kept saying that now he gets a chance to play and show what he could do. He showed flashes at the end of last year with Orlando, and he's someone that is just a freak athlete. He's a great, great athlete, and he's getting better as a player. He's looked good here in Vegas, and I think he's kind of showcasing what he can do. I'm curious to see what Orlando does with their team because they have so many of these talented young guards with Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, RJ Hampton, Markelle Fultz. I really think we're going to see a lot of 3-guard lineups from Orlando. And that was something that I asked, Jamal Mosley about. And he said, it's a great question. We'll see. He didn't want to tip his hand too much, but it's seeming like that's what we're going to see from them. And, Hampton and Cole Anthony have kind of alluded to that as well. So, I'm excited. I think he's someone that played well when he was in New Zealand, prior to his rookie season in the NBA, and he showed flashes over there too. He's still super young, but I think with more playing time and the ball in his hands more, I think we can see him have a pretty big year. So he's not one of the top guys, but I think he's being forgotten a little bit from that rookie group. So I think he could actually break out this upcoming season.
Okay.
The opportunity's there. I'll say that.
Okay.
All right. Our second game is called Pick and Roll. I'm going to give you a few players and then a prompt, and then you pick one and tell us why you're rolling with them. So we have Ben Simmons, Damian Lillard, and Bradley Beal. Blank will be the first on the move because of what?
Oof. Okay, I'm going to go Ben Simmons. Here's why. Actually, that's tough. Okay, yeah, I'll go Ben Simmons.
Even better.
I'll go Ben Simmons, but here's why it's tough. So I have heard that Daryl Morey doesn't want to trade Ben Simmons until he's absolutely sure that Damian Lillard isn't available, because he would be devastated if they traded Ben Simmons and then Dame Lillard requested a trade weeks later and he wasn't able to get in that mix. So, but I don't think that necessarily is coming right away. Dame, has talked about their struggles in free agency, the fact that they didn't add anyone. He basically just, said it's what happens. We're trying our best. He was focused on the Olympics. I do think eventually Dame will change teams. But I think what's going to happen with Philly is that they're going to come down from their huge asking price, and Simmons is going to be moved sooner than later. After the way Joel Embiid and Doc Rivers threw him under the bus at the end of that. Yeah, there's no way that can work. And maybe he goes back and plays a few games here and there just to help his stock a bit and show, hey, I am the defensive player of the year runner-up. I still can, average close to a triple-double and be a great facilitator and da-da-da-da. But there's not a long-term future in Philly anymore. We all see that. Lillard has been so patient with this Blazers organization, and I think he really wants to make it work there. So I think he's going to give this roster a try. But then maybe before the trade deadline, something happens, or next offseason, that's where we start seeing Lillard, request a trade and him be on the move. With Beal, it's interesting because people that are, around the situation, they think it's very possible he signs the Supermax and stays in Washington for, several more years. He's very close to Spencer Dinwiddie. They're good friends. They have talked about, how they believe they can recruit free agents to Washington together. So it would not surprise me. Everyone wants to steal Beal away from Washington. Yeah, all these executives are circling like vultures that desperately want him to request out. I know a lot of fans are frustrated with Beal because they want him on their team and he's not requesting out. But it would not surprise me if Beal stays in Washington, not just this whole season, but for several more years after that on a Supermax extension. I think he's the least likely of that group to be traded in the near future.
There we have it.
Yeah.
How would you rank that, Sherrod? For both of you, how would you guys? What would your list be?
Ben, first one on the move.
Since you have quoted sources, so I can't, refute your Bradley Beal one, but he would have been my pick because of the way him and Tatum have been, really close with each other, but also the subtweeting is what's getting to him. Him and Kamaya, they've been subtweeting so much that I'm just like, something's gonna happen. I don't know what it is.
That's true. Well, and Beal's interesting because he can fit on literally every team in the NBA. That's true. If he was available, I mean, the offers that Washington's getting, I'm sure they're just ridiculous because they have so many teams entering that bidding war. So yeah, it's just interesting to see the Dinwiddie thing helps. And they had a really good offseason. I think that's not being talked about very much. They had a good draft. They've added some really good players. They actually may have gotten better after that Westbrook trade, which is kind of crazy. But they added multiple rotation players, a couple starters, Spencer Dinwiddie. I think they could actually be a playoff team this year again, and they may have gotten better, which is pretty crazy to think about. Usually that Westbrook deal, we heard about how it was untradeable and all that, and they got a pretty good return for it.
Yeah, and they were ravaged by injuries last year, and so
and the COVID outbreak.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah.
So who would your breakout second-year player be?
Aaron Nesmith, without question. And to me, it's about him just getting more reps, showing what he can do. To me, he's like Chris Middleton 2.0. Not a coincidence they went to the same high school. And one of our guests on the A-List podcast, Jerry Stackhouse, said he was going to be an all-star in 5 years. And I've been around Jerry Stackhouse for about too long to go into. Jerry does not lie. He knows his stuff. He knows his stuff. So if he says he's going to be an all-star in 5 years, then damn it, I'm going to invest in that stock right now. Put my chips in right now.
All in
on Aaron. Your answer is going to be more popular with Celtics fans than my answer. But I like that one. That was good.
He's playing to the
audience. Agree too.
Oh, goodness. Wow. This has been fun.
Yeah.
Thank you guys
Vegas
for having
Wi-Fi and everything. This has been fun.
We got the CCO of basketballnews.com. Like, who would have imagined? Our little podcast.
I'll be back in 3 years when I just have some random title as a writer somewhere when I'm fired at Basketball News, and I'll be begging you guys to have me on. Don't worry, I'll be back. I'll be back as a writer sometime soon.
Oh, stop it!
Oh goodness!
I appreciate you guys having me though. Thank you so much. This was fun.
This was great. Alex Kennedy, CCO of basketballnews.com. Lots of really good writers in there, great podcasters. Shout out to my boy, Mr. James Posey, who's part of the basketballnews.com family. Also my boy Etan from Syracuse, another part of the podcasting. Right, I think he writes for you guys as well.
He writes for us, and he writes every week, and he has a podcast with us. We also do these live watch parties where we all watch a game together. He's always on those, so he's been amazing. Him and Posey both. We also have Kenya Martin, Rex Chapman. It's been a lot of fun. It's been great.
Yeah, so absolutely check out basketballnews.com. Lots of great content, written, podcasts, and otherwise on there. And again, Alex, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate you coming on, man. This was great.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
I'll see you, buddy.
Take care.
My man Alex Kennedy from basketballnews.com. Great stuff. Great stuff. Good stuff on the Celtics. Good stuff on the NBA in general. But just for you, Kwani, I mean, what jumped out to you about our conversation?
Everything. I mean, the conversation was so good, but really having that analysis. I know you're also in Vegas, but the perspective of specifically the Celtics players that are in Vegas right now, having someone with a more outside lens, not that you're biased, but really just speak to what this team looks like in the summer league, but also the moves that Brad Stevens has made. And again, another outsider just giving more perspective on what the rest of the NBA world thinks about it. I think Celtics fans that are listening would be very encouraged to hear that not only is Brad looking at the future, but the future so far is looking a little bright when it comes to the players as well.
Yeah, I thought that, for me, that was the best part of the conversation, is just really looking at Brad and what he's done and just how that's perceived from someone other than folks who deal with Brad on a regular basis. That perspective is very important because it gives you a sense of not only perspectives outside of Boston, but in a more grander sense, perspectives of other teams and how they look at the Celtics. I know I've talked to a couple of folks who have been impressed with what Brad has been able to do in a relatively short period of time. And the one thing that one player personnel executive mentioned to me this afternoon was that Brad, in a very short period of time, hasn't really tried to be Danny Ainge 2.0, yet he hasn't tried to be like, 180-degree version of Danny Ainge. He's just been himself, and it's working for him. And you never really know when coaches make that transition from the bench to the front office, how they're going to change. What are they going to be doing differently? Will they have certain things that help them to be successful as a coach? Can those translate to the front office? And so far, the early returns look very good and very promising for Brad Stevens and the Boston Celtics.
That is true. The future's in good hands.
Shout out to our guy, Alex Kennedy, who was really amazingly awesome on the podcast this week. And we'll be back next week with more goods on the NBA, on the Celtics, and all that, and then some. For Kwani A. Lunis, A. Sherrod Blakely, the A-List Podcast, we are out.